So hello and welcome to the New Gig podcast. I'm your host, Glen Hodgson, and today I'm delighted to be joined by the founder of IWORK, Julia Kermode. How are you doing, Julia?
Hi, I'm very well. Nice to be here.
It's great to have you here. And look, you're doing fantastic things. So busy. Give us a little bit of a background on IWORK, how you came about this, why you started it, and what need and problem were you solving?
Sure. Well, I obviously am solving the world's problems through IWORK. But yeah, so around 20% of the UK's workforce work, but not in permanent work. So that's contingent work, and that might be people who are gigging on the side of their permanent job. They might be working as self-employed. They might be a freelancer. They might be a tradesperson. They might just be a temporary worker. And I shouldn't say just temporary worker, because that word just is actually a bit insulting, and I try not to say it. So I can't believe I've just done that, because actually temporary workers are massively important to the workforce. And here in the UK, we're finding it hugely important right now, because we've got so many staff shortages of permanent staff in lots of sectors. I don't know if you guys, because I know you're based in Europe, I don't know if you've heard about our fuel shortages.
Yes.
So we're struggling a bit here at the moment. And so one of the things I'm trying to do with IWORK is promote and champion the whole way of working independently. And that includes temporary workers, as I say, gig workers, self-employed people, and everything in between.
Yeah, absolutely. And you really sort of get into a very good point there. I mean, I was into the UK a couple of weeks ago. Everywhere there was signs outside hotels, bars, restaurants, staff vacancies, staff wanted, let alone the sort of the lorry drivers issue, which is ongoing. A really big issue. And of course, as you say, it's going to be an essential part of the workforce more and more as we move forward. And how is digitalization and the use of technology facilitating this change as well, Julia?
Well, it's massive. And I know you'll have done sessions with people about the platform economy, and that's kind of one part of the digitization agenda. And there's platforms for everything. And if it's just down to sharing skills, a skills exchange, that type of thing, or you kind of think of traditional Uber type of services, and it's actually quite funny calling them traditional now, because they were a disruptor, but now that's kind of so last year, or
we're moving quickly.
It's massive. So for kind of the whole space that we're in, it's huge, because it opens up so many possibilities. But also within permanent work, it's massive as well, because we've all just experienced the pandemic and people working from home rather than commuting to work, and all of that has been part of the digital program, because people are able to kind of be connected wherever they are. And at the moment I'm in the UK and you're not, but we're here talking, and we're talking to a nice large audience. So that even just that agenda, it's the whole thing is just mind-blowing, actually, where we've come in just the space of a few years.
We've certainly sped up the whole process. Never waste a good crisis is an often used phrase. And I think that, if something at all positive can come out of these terrible times that we've lived through over the past 18 months, then hopefully the sort of this change in the world of work and the approach to what is a job and how we sort of sell our time to get paid, I suppose, that could be the positive that we take from this very, very negative series of events and things that have affected our lives in so many different ways.
Yeah, and one of the things, just picking up on what you were saying about how we get paid for work, you don't even have to get paid in a monetary sense. So, it could be, as I say, some sort of exchange process. I mean, I don't know much about Bitcoin. Can you get paid in Bitcoin? I've absolutely no idea. I wish I hadn't really said that to be honest with you, because it's not anything I know much about. But I think the whole shape of work is changing enormously, and it's very, very very exciting. And I think the opportunities for people are second to none. And one of the things that I think has really changed is the whole prioritizing and the whole agenda. So what I mean is businesses used to have the balance of power, and if you were a permanent employee, you would work for a business and you might be very grateful to have a job, whereas now that whole balance of power is shifting and people are thinking, what is it I want to do? What do I want to do with my time? Do I even want to be permanently employed? Do I want to do a bit of gigging on the side of my permanent employment? And they're kind of deciding for themselves, and they're a lot more empowered than people have ever been. And I have to say, I find it just so exciting and such a refreshing change. And from the business perspective, the ones that are getting the most success are the more forward-thinking, creative ones that are working out how best to engage people, whether that's through, as on a freelance or contract basis, or whether people still want permanent employment. And I think that shift is to be celebrated, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. Freelancing 2.0. And of course, I think you're absolutely right. The more developed companies, big and small, who have a freelancer strategy or a sort of a part-time worker, flexible workforce, innovative workforce strategy, are the ones who are going to win in this in this whole change and this movement that we're seeing underway.
Yeah, and it's interesting. And the other type of person I wanted to mention actually is people with disabilities. And there's all sorts of different types of disabilities, physical disabilities, and generally the most obvious ones we think of. But the whole digital agenda and the whole reprogramming we're going through in terms of how we think about work is opening up so many doors for those types of people who perhaps weren't able to commute before because of their disabilities. And also it's opening up the world of work to people who have kind of family responsibilities, caring responsibilities, whatever it might be. So I am so excited about the future of work. And I know I've obviously had too much coffee this morning.
Julia, I think you're absolutely right, and I share your enthusiasm and your excitement, because, as you say, we hear in sort of these negative stories in the media, but the reality is much more nuanced than this. And we see people who, as you rightly say, and I think you're really highlighting a very important issue, that people who have been excluded from a traditional 9-to-5 job, who have been excluded from the traditional workforce and the idea of employment, are suddenly, through sort of technology and digitalization, actually finding ways in to give value, give impact, and get paid for them. But of course, the flexibility, they need to be able to do things on their own time because they've got other responsibilities and other activities. So it's opening up, and surely for the economy as well, opening up a window to a whole new set of skills, creativity, and potential services.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really changed how we think about things, because I saw a post probably on LinkedIn the other day from someone who was returning to work after a period of maternity leave, and she was saying about how she feels. She was being quite open about about different elements of that, and how she was concerned about how colleagues might perceive her, and does having a child affect how she's perceived successfully, etc., and all sorts of different issues that I had never really stopped to think of, because I've not been in that situation. But the fact that she is now posting this stuff, quite personal stuff, on a public platform, and having those conversations, within her workplace, it wouldn't have happened a few years ago. And we're much more accepting of the fact that people don't necessarily fit into a 9-to-5 for whatever reason. In her case, it was obviously having had a child, but it could be all sorts of different reasons. And the other thing that we're a lot more accepting of now is mental health issues, and people needing to have a break from work for that type of reason. And this whole thing of having these conversations is pretty incredible, actually. When I started my career, probably more than 20 years ago,
right,
it was 9 to 5, and if you didn't fit, that you didn't have a job, and you went and did something else, or maybe whatever. But yeah, it's so refreshing and so exciting in lots of different ways. And I realize I've probably got off on a bit of a tangent now. we need to bring it back to the gig economy and that side of things, probably.
No, but I think this is a fundamental part of the future of work, that people were isolated or basically had to make choices that, okay, if you can't handle this 9 to 5, and a job being a place that you go to every morning, then you've got no place. If you want to have a family and have flexibility, you either play by our rules or you get out. And this was the stark choice that millions of people had to make as a lifestyle choice. And I think it's fantastic that people are saying, well, no, I want to have both, but I want to have it on my terms. And the balance of power shifting towards the individual with the skills, knowledge, and expertise that, let's be honest, companies and organizations need. And if they don't adapt, they're going to miss out on all this talent. And it's self-interest. They need to evolve.
Yeah, totally. And the other thing, thinking along those lines, is, of course, what's happened now with digitalisation, actually, going back to that question, is it's opened up the world of work literally on a global landscape. Because if you, at one point you just said about, going to the office 9 to 5, but actually people don't need to commute now. You can work anywhere. And that means that companies aren't restricted to their commuters zone around where their headquarters is. So, you could now be competing with people on a global level, which is great, because everyone's skills are taken into account, and companies can bring in the best talent that they need for whatever it is. And also they don't need to have people on a permanent basis, because it's way more acceptable to be working on a freelance and contract basis now than it ever has been. And that really suits people, because again, it's that balance of power. They're in charge of their own destiny. If they're self-employed, they're in business, they pick and choose, in essence, who they work for. Now, isn't that a luxury? But I know some people who aren't scrabbling around for clients, and they are actually saying, no, I don't want to work for you, because I don't like some of the stuff that you're doing, and maybe they're on an ethical basis or whatever, and that whole kind of choice is fantastic, and it's huge progress.
Absolutely. And so what does this mean, Julia, for individuals like you and me? How do we market ourselves? How do we find the gigs? What do we need to be thinking about to market ourselves as individuals and creating our own brands?
That is huge, isn't it? Because, as I said, we're in a global marketplace now. How the heck do we stand out? Well, I mean, that's massively a massive question. And the sorts of advice we always give to people when they contact us at IWORK is in relation to kind of building your networks and making the most of all of those connections, because you never know when the next kind of gig will come along. And I don't mean kind of pumping everyone with these shallow sales messages, because that won't get you anywhere. It's building proper relationships, and never ever leave a job in bad terms, because you won't ever get any future work. And I know that sounds probably quite obvious, but it's always got to have half an eye on where's my next bit of work coming from, and be nurturing that kind of pipeline of future clients. And the most successful people do that without even really thinking, but it's when you're starting off and you just like, how the heck do I do I do this? But it just becomes innate, and having those networks, staying in touch with people, being genuine, being authentic. I mean, we overuse the word authentic, I think, but it matters. People buy from people, you know. You could be the absolute best person at whatever your particular niche is, but if you're not very nice or personable to work with, or whatever the barriers might be, then people won't work with you. You might get one gig once, but you know, so don't kind of, for everything I've said about empowering the individual, don't fall into the trap of being arrogant and thinking it will just come, because you can't afford to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. So the idea to be proactive and to thrive in this new marketplace, and of course the more effort is needed in one sense, but also the continual, I wouldn't like to call it a sales cycle, because that sounds a bit too old-fashioned, but in terms of putting yourself out there and doing your branding and making sure that your profile is being built in the right way as well, let's be honest.
Yeah, totally. And, you know, I know that then perhaps you might have some introverts listening who are thinking, oh my goodness, I can't possibly put myself out there. How do I do that? And I have a lot of sympathy for that. But actually, I know a few people who would say they're introverts who are very successfully running their own business. And it's almost like, I think the first time you put yourself out there a bit, whether it's on kind of social media or whatever it might be, probably feels really awkward, but once you've done it once, and you keep going and keep building those contacts, then it will become much more natural. But I remember when I very first started on social media years ago, and I just had this mental block, and I don't know what I thought was going to happen, to be honest. I mean, you know, I was kind of stressing about sending my first ever tweet and you know, silly things like that, and you just have to push yourself, do it, and really, what's the worst that's going to happen? And you know, I realize my Twitter example is a bit kind of simplistic, but it's still the same principle. Reach out to people. You reach out to someone. If they don't accept your invitation to connect or whatever, there's no harm done. It doesn't mean you're a bad person. It doesn't mean they're a bad person. What's the worst that can happen? You know, but without trying, you would never know, and you never know where the connections can lead you.
And I think that's an important part about sort of getting yourself out there, and also seeking a bit of discomfort. You have to sort of push yourself a little bit to do these things, but they bring their own rewards. And I think just the ability to just start somewhere, use what you've got, and just get going. And almost by praxis, you learn. You learn by doing, and you refine things over time. But I think this is also maybe a generational thing. Millennials are much easier. They don't care if they make a mistake or they put something that's not perfect, because digital natives this is the way we live. Whereas you know, people who are sort of already had sort of a traditional career, maybe really weigh up every sort of post, every tweet, and thinking, well, how will I be perceived? Well, it moves so quickly. Get out there, jump in the cold water.
Exactly. What's the worst that can happen? But that's so funny. But I do remember being that person agonizing over the wording of every little thing. And now you just kind of, it's different now. And what you just said was, well, we should have a bit of discomfort. And I think that's quite a good general rule. I was talking to someone yesterday. She just started a new role, and so I was talking to her about different things, and I said, you know, to be honest, you know, we all need to be pushing ourselves, don't we? And we can never be complacent. We can never think that, you know, because basically I was asking her for some feedback on some stuff, and I was like, well, you know, fresh pair of eyes looking at this, you tell me, and you know, I'm happy to have some discomfort from you, because then it will help me kind of do better. And you're absolutely right. You've just said exactly the same thing that I said yesterday. We need that discomfort so we can improve, right?
Yeah, definitely the case. And I think that also the speed of change as well. What works now in probably a year's time maybe will seem a little bit dated. So we have to keep up updating and challenging ourselves, but also to remain valuable and to have engagement. We also need to, as solopreneurs, or what we like to call as freelancers, have to take the time and effort to be constantly updating our skills, updating our knowledge, so that we can be as relevant as possible for the marketplace out there.
I think when you're in an employed role, you probably have an annual appraisal or something like that. Now there's no such systems in place when you're kind of working for yourself. So you need to kind of really reflect on a regular basis, because otherwise you will find you're kind of in a rut and you're not growing and progressing, and you need to almost have a critical friend, whether it's just your mind thinking about things in the way that a critical friend might, or whether it's an actual critical friend. But you need to kind of get an overview and an analysis of how you're doing and how the business is, so that you can make sure that you're still relevant. And the whole skills development side of things is far too easy to let slide, because when you work for yourself, you want to be doing work that earns you income rather than focusing on yourself. But if you spend a little bit of money on professional development, that investment can really reap huge rewards. And of course, whatever development it is, you're in a space with other people, networking opportunities, client pipeline, etc. So you never know.
I think it's absolutely right to sort of make that investment, move forward, and be able to think about sort of what's next. And I think that honestly, the people in the freelance world are much more dynamic and have more to offer than people in traditional roles, who, not everyone, but they can have a tendency to say, well, I'm doing my job, and not push themselves as much. And therefore their potential value to employers and organization is reduced a little bit, shall we say, within that. But also I think that in the sort of the freelancing, gig economy, sharing economy world, there is this tendency to give feedback, and almost accelerated feedback loops, as an American colleague of mine likes to say, that by each gig, each activity you do, you there's a clear beginning, middle, and end, and you get sort of almost rated on that. People can give you feedback on these small projects, which could actually help you learn to the next task that you're involved in. So you can almost take yourself further than, as you were saying before, Julia, the traditional annual appraisal, which is probably out of date by the time it's given. So things are moving forward.
And I think the major difference is, when you're working for yourself, you're responsible for your next opportunity. Whereas when you're in paid, permanent employment, it's someone else's responsibility. And you can almost take the view, well, I'm not paid to think, I come, turn up, do my job. It's not my problem whether the company succeeds or not. I've got a job. I mean, that would be very short-sighted thinking, given our recent history. But whereas when you're working for yourself, the whole thing is your responsibility, and actually you are a lot more invested in it, I suppose, which I suppose is why this whole freelance world is full of go-getters who just constantly striving to do better.
Absolutely. And I think that this is a positive thing for individuals, as well as for companies, organizations, and society as a whole, being more inclusive, but also giving more opportunities to a broader group of people to be happy. I mean, if we look at sort of the statistics on the market research on traditional employment, the average individual is either miserable or very, very unhappy in their jobs. So this as well is something that needs to change, and we see that people are generally happier, more engaged in what they're doing if they are in the sharing economy, platform economy, or freelancing.
Yeah, I actually I read that in your report recently. So,
Yeah.
so,
Well, thank you.
so yeah, no, and so give yourself a plug for your report. But anyone listening, it's actually a really good report, and it's not too long. Sometimes you kind of talk about reports that are on the workforce, and people think, oh God, I don't really want to be bothered to read it. But actually, this one you just pulled together kind of lots of really interesting facts and things like that, and it was I was quite astonished when I saw that permanent employees are just so much more unhappy and demotivated because I mean, I suppose it's quite a long time since I've been in that position of kind of being in a job where you haven't enjoyed it. But so I was really surprised, but now I stop and think about it, perhaps it's not that surprising, and it's probably why we're experiencing this big change in the world of work, because the last 18 months has made everyone question why the heck am I spending my time in this job that I don't enjoy? Why don't I do something else? And yes, why don't you? Now is such a great time to kind of be empowered and follow your dreams.
Absolutely, and why now more than ever, I think, is a great question that people ask themselves. I think even sort of the broader statistics, but also anecdotally for people I speak to, that a big cutting point has been organizations which have been forcing people back to the office after the pandemic, saying, well, look, you have to come in 5 days a week, and people are saying, well, no, I'm not prepared to do that. I want to find a new model. I've got a taste for remote working and flexibility, and I quite like it, and I see the advantages. So employers who don't sort of catch that mood are going to lose people as well. So I think the sort of the next big wave of freelancing and more flexible work is just starting now with the sort of the forced return to work that we're seeing.
Yeah, and there's a big company that I know not too far from where I live, and they are they've got on very well during the pandemic, and their business has continued to grow. But they are now saying exactly that: we want everyone back 9 to 5 in the office. So all these people who have been very effective, contributed to the company's growth during difficult times, and now probably feeling a bit penalized because they're having to commute. And it is fine if it's a short journey, I suppose, but also, why commute into the office to do exactly what you have been doing previously, especially if you're going to sit there, with headphones on and if you're not necessarily part of, I don't know, I can understand sales teams, etc., get on really well in a face-to-face environment. And, a lot of companies are choosing a blended approach, because some things, an office base works really well for some types of people, but less well for others. So that blended approach and hybrid working is kind of what most companies are doing now. But I am surprised at the number of companies that are saying, no, we will have no home working, despite the fact it was very successful. You will come back. And just think that's incredibly short-sighted. But you never know, there might be a reason why they're doing it. Perhaps they want to shake up the workforce, I don't know. But my own view is it's not a very sensible idea at all. But there you go.
I tend to agree with you on that one, Julia, and I think that the people power and the talent that exists will be demanding and setting the rules of the game much more than they ever have before, as we work together and collaborate on creating the future of work and the rules of the game around this. So Julia, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you today, sharing in your enthusiasm, your knowledge, and your ongoing expertise. So I just wish you the best of luck in terms of what you're doing and the support that you're giving everyone, and opening people's eyes on a daily basis to the opportunities that do exist today.
Oh, fantastic. I've absolutely loved chatting to you. So thank you so much for having me on. And as I say, genuinely excited about the future of work for everyone, but especially the whole non-permanent workforce, which is hugely important to the global economy, actually. So keep up the good work, listeners. It's brilliant.
Excellent. Well, thank you, and we'll speak again. Very good.
Brilliant. I got a bit overexcited from time